Thank you very much. When we booked Patrisse Cullors to join us this morning, we plan to discuss the 4th anniversary of the organization. She co-founded Black Lives Matter, the book she's writing, other topics, and then Charlottesville happened. So it changes the conversation.
Couldn't be a better morning to have you here, huh?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Just as a person, I'm sure you were watching it all weekend. I'm sure you know people there. What was your reaction?
It's heartbreaking. I send my condolences to the people of Charlottesville who lost one of their family members, Heather Dreyer, to the community of Charlottesville who stood up courageously to white supremacists. And I think our work is clearly connected to challenging white supremacists across the country, but also how it connects to the White House. Maxine Waters, Congresswoman Maxine Waters tweeted, "We are now the white supremacist White House." And I think it's important that we talk about the government and its relationship to what's happening in the streets.
What did you think when you saw President Trump's response to this?
It was disappointing. It was very disappointing. People died. People died over the weekend. People are seriously injured. There are still people in the hospital in critical condition. And you would think that the President of the United States would say a more thoughtful response, would have a response about mourning and grieving, but instead he decided to condone the behavior.
Do you think that it was because, if you're critical of what he said, because he had a tin ear about this, or because, as some people said, he was sending the wolf whistle out to some supporters?
I think what we're seeing clearly
Dog whistle, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What we're seeing is the people who showed up in Charlottesville with torches and chanting blood and soil. That's Trump's base. That's the people that voted for him. So I think Trump feels accountable to them. And I think also as we watch Trump appoint people like Betsy DeVos, who wants to privatize education, people like Jeff Sessions, who wants to reel us back to the war on drugs.
But Jeff Sessions made a strong statement, at least, about what happened there.
I saw that, and I thought that was actually really important.
When you talk about it's Trump's base, remember, what was it, 60 million, 65 million people voted for him. Most of those people aren't like those people in Charlottesville.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. I think the people in Charlottesville, which will also be the people in Boston. There's a march coming up in Boston, sort of under the same banner of this free speech, but we know it's white supremacist. That these folks are the minority, actually. They are the minority. And so, but we still have to challenge them in the streets. And more importantly, I think we need to challenge the policies that they are linked to.
Patrisse, the challenging in the streets leads to this violence, right? Is there any way to get these type of demonstrations stopped before they even begin? Yeah. I get this free speech that it's put under, but there's a danger here to society. What are you guys able to do in that area?
Well, you know that the cities are able to say, no, we don't want you to march here. We don't want this here. And yet cities like Charlottesville and now Boston are permitting it. And I think we are having pretty much a huge debate right now around what's the difference between free speech and hate speech, and what is actually protected. And I think we have to challenge this idea that white supremacists should be protected. I think we should, cities should be saying no.
You know, and we've talked about this, there are people who look at your organization as hate speech and black racism.
Yes.
So the argument could be made in some quarters, they'll say you can't speak.
And that argument has been made. And what we say is black communities are a marginalized community, and we see that by, there's facts, right? 2 million people are inside US jails and prison, 1 million are black people. Black women have the lowest pay rates. Black people have the highest homeless rates, right? Our civil rights and our human rights are constantly being violated. And yet, we see white men, largely, these were white men, who are not, their civil rights and human rights aren't being violated. And so if people who are marginalized have the right to stand up and fight for equal rights, that's what our movement's doing.
Well,
this movement isn't fighting for equal rights, it's fighting for its supremacy.
And to take rights away. And the
Correct.
concept of white supremacy, they say, well, we're not really bigoted, we are just upholding what made this country. This country was created by white men. And your reaction is?
That's also, this country was founded on killing indigenous people. This country is also founded on
Slavery,
enslaving
3/5 of a
exactly
yes, okay,
black
yeah.
people. And so there are parts of this country that we should say, yes, we uplift things like the right for liberty, right, and justice. But the parts of the country that have sort of a terrible past, we shouldn't be uplifting that. And we see these groups uplifting the terrible past.
I have a thought. Sorry, Liz. You and I were talking about this. What if these organizations, they're not that large, what if you just let them go out there and go around with their torches and their signs and just laugh at them, isolate them for the fools?
Not show up, not counter-protest.
Isolate them for the fools that they are. Yeah. Don't give them the dignity of even reacting and overreacting to them. Do you think that would work better?
I don't, and I think some people need to feel like they have agency. When white supremacists show up into your community and in your school, it makes you feel like you don't have agency. Communities are traumatized by what happened in Charlottesville. And so the need to sort of stand up and show up and protest feels really important. And it's our right. It's our right to be able to protest. So I think people, some of our folks, not everybody, but some of our folks are saying, we want to be in the streets and shouting them down. We want to go down in history saying, we said no to hate speech.
And you're actually answering this as we go, but I'm going to just hit you with the direct. When President Trump did respond, it was on all sides.
Yes.
He didn't like it on all sides. And there are people who point that and say, hey, look, the counter-protesters are out there causing trouble too. The counter-protesters are, I've seen some pictures that are surprising as well.
Throwing the balloons with urine in it, that kind of a thing.
Right. So respond to that.
Yeah, I think at any protest that we've seen in the last few years, there are always a few people who are not in alignment with the larger mission of the people that are there. And we cannot charge those individuals with the larger fight against Trump and a larger fight against white supremacy. Although people should be held accountable for their behavior, I don't think we have to subscribe an entire group to that behavior.
All right. As always, good to see you. Thank you
so much.
Yeah. Congratulations on 4 years since Black Lives Matter guys started. You guys
coming
are
a little
making
later.